You're listening to Tapestry, a podcast by a music lover for a music lover. I'm your host, Kelly. Join me as I learn about the common thread that weaves throughout our lives, music. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 25 of Tapestry, and today's episode is kind of a special one for me. I am pretty stunned, but very excited to bring you an interview with two members of the highly appraised progressive rock jazz fusion band, Thank You Scientist. If you listen to prog and you haven't heard of Thank You Scientist, I really want to know what rock you are living under. These guys are exploding, and they are one of the most fun and technically impressive bands I've probably ever seen live. They're just great. Check them out. But today I will be interviewing Ben Karras, who's the violin player for Thank You Scientist, as well as Tom Monda, who plays guitar and a host of other instruments. Ben and Tom were kind enough to lend me their evening, and we discussed a couple topics, including what the number one goal of a modern musician is, using authenticity as a waypoint for navigating the music industry, and what their experiences were like filming a solar-powered music video with a professional drum corps. You're listening to a snippet of FXM LDR, a song off their latest album, Terraformer. I am so glad to have you guys here. It is pretty crazy, actually. Today is my 1-year anniversary of starting this podcast, and I just can't believe that I'm actually sitting here talking to people from Thank You Scientists. So that's pretty crazy. So thanks for making my year anniversary kind of go in with a bang, I guess.
Well, congrats and happy anniversary.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a big fan, obviously, so I'm super pumped that you guys agreed to be here. But why don't you guys both introduce yourselves, because I usually just add in a little bit of intro.
All right, the dude with the higher voice is Tom. I play guitar in Thank You Scientist.
And the dude with the other higher voice is Ben. I play the electric violin in Thank You Scientist.
The electric violin. Not just any violin, but the electric violin.
Nice.
Well, so you two lucky fellas are 2 of 7 in Thank You Scientist, so I guess for the evening you're going to be the arbiters of everything Thank You Scientist, even though the rest of your band is not here, but that would be insanely difficult to interview 7 people. So, but yeah, so you guys are from New Jersey, and I guess I would kind of describe you as like prog rock, jazz fusion, some blend of the two, but I know as a fan it's so much more than that. So, but being that you're kind of representing the band today, I'll probably have some general questions, but I am definitely curious just about you two guys as individuals, and sort of how you started your own musical journeys. So why don't you lead me into that?
Cool. Well, for me, with my musical journey, well, I guess I started playing violin when I was 6. Not by my choice, it was my parents' choice back then. But they kept on me. I practiced, and when I was a teenager, around 16 or so, I got my first electric violin. Started playing in my friend's garage metal band back in the day, and it took me a little while to figure out what I wanted to do, but I ended up going to school for classical violin at Montclair, and then I just kind of always wanted to play in a band, and the opportunity to audition for Thank You Scientist came up because I knew the violinist who was in the band before me, and then since then I made it in the band, and long story short, I've been just helping grow, under Tom's lead, and just becoming working on being a freelance musician, and just always trying to get better at my craft. That's a nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom?
My background isn't too far off from Ben. I got a little bit of a later start to playing music. So I was always like a rabid listener of music. ever since I was younger. I raided my dad's record collection, and he had a bunch of cool stuff. Beatles, Allman Brothers, Zappa, Yes, that kind of thing. Usual suspects that someone of his generation would have. And yeah, I was just so into obsessively listening to records, and I love music. I have, a lot of artists in my family. My grandfather was a jazz drummer, so I always heard jazz growing up, and a whole bunch of stuff. And it never occurred to me that I could actually play music myself, though, until much later. So to some degree, I still consider myself more of a listener than a player, but I'm trying to get the playing together. And I formed Thank You Scientist around the time I was in college, and it's sort of grown and evolved, and it's been like my passion project and my main focus of energy for a while. And yeah, here we are.
Okay, so Tom, you're essentially, I don't want to say like the band leader, because I think when I say that, some people seem to think it implies that you're like, oh, I'm the most important guy and the rest of these guys are chopped liver. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you were sort of the founding member and kind of rounded up the troops when you guys both attended Montclair State, right?
For the most part, yeah, I would say that,
Okay.
that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sure you've had to tell this story a bunch of times, but essentially, how did the original lineup form, and how did you guys all meet?
Well, Thank You Sign just started as like an umbrella project for like whatever I was writing, like at the time. Like, and I used to sing and play guitar, and it was a little more like, I don't know, it had a sort of different sound back then. And I was a singer by kind of like, because we couldn't find anybody kind of scenario. I didn't like doing it.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a while, and then I was bouncing around, figuring out what I wanted to do in school. Probably similar situation in the band. And eventually, I decided that I was going to study jazz, and so I really wanted to get serious about it. So I kind of stopped playing in bands for a little while to just really kind of focus my energy on that idiom and get my shit together. Eventually just playing jazz, I realized would drive me insane. I needed like a palate cleanser. I got the band going again and found some people. And through that process, that's how we linked up with Sal, who's, become, over the years, obviously, he's become like a super, super important part, of writing and everything. And through Montclair, I met Ben and some of the older members, and obviously, me and Ben we worked together, we tour the world together, and we lived together. So, obviously,
safe to say you like each other.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the guy, to say the least. And
Tom's not so bad.
And and so I guess to make a very long, excruciatingly boring story short, the usual trials and tribulations and growing pains and things like that. The band evolved a lot over time, in terms of like, well, schedule demands and also musical demands. And, it's grown and morphed, and we kind of, brought us to where we are today.
Are you guys doing this like full time as your full time jobs?
Me and Ben both freelance pretty actively. So like we'll tour, and then when we're home, we teach and we freelance. We play gigs with a lot of different people, we'll get hired to do we're kind of utility guys, any kind of gigs that come up that need guitar or violin or, anything like that. That's so, we're putting food on the table with music.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love hearing that, because I never want to be like, oh, what's your day job? But unfortunately, that's kind of a reality for a lot of people.
It is, definitely. Very much, yeah.
Yeah. No, I did. I couldn't help but fangirl a little bit. I told some friends. I said, "Oh my God, I get to interview Thank You Scientist," and because I know so many friends who are also fans of your guys' stuff, I had them sort of give me some listener questions essentially. And one question I got that I thought was really great was, what is your band's strategy for like staying ahead of the game financially? Because I can't imagine that touring with a 7-piece band is cheap. And I've seen you guys live 3 times now, and I know you're always touring. You're always out and about when you aren't writing. How do you make that work?
Well, the financial side of things, fortunately we're slowly growing. We're starting to just build up steam, but I guess it comes down to just to lifestyle really. Don't live too lavishly. We gotta be a little conservative with the money. On the road, we're very conscious of how we spend. Because yeah, you're absolutely right. 7 guys on the road, it's expensive, and an eighth when you include Matt, our TM. Yeah, when it's like anything else, you could call it a skill. Like, I mean, the first time we went out, we were spending more money than we probably should have on like food or whatever. But you get smarter and wiser. You find out how to be more efficient as you go. And then yeah, when you're home, you just have to buckle down and bank up. Just
Right.
work.
So I wasn't sure if yeah, I heard like I think Carnifex was the band that saved like $30,000 on their tour because they didn't take a bus or something, so they just drove a van.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Buses are insanely expensive. I mean, if you know anything about like buses, like not only do you have the bus itself and to fuel a giant thing like that, but you also have to pay a professional driver. That professional driver requires hotel rooms each, during the day because he sleeps on an opposite schedule. It's incredibly costly, and yeah, I'm kind of blown away that so many people do it when they're not making tons and tons of money.
Seriously, yeah.
I mean,
Right.
we decided we were definitely a van band, and we did a lot of van touring. We noodled around with the bandwagon 1 or 2 times, which is sort of like an intermediary between like a van and a tour bus, and we decided that even that was just stupidly expensive.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's comfortable.
yeah,
It's very convenient, but the price tag just makes it
yeah.
completely unreasonable.
I-
At least where we are.
Yeah, we'd rather come home and be able to pay our bills from tour than just be a little more comfortable. So we definitely grind on the road, and we definitely, like Ben said, we try to be smart with the spending. We recently bought our own vehicle, so we roll in an RV now that we can all sleep.
Nice.
We built an extra bunk in it and fit it all out, and it's actually kind of great because Max the dog comes on tour with us, and he has a place to chill, nice quiet place that's air conditioned, and he has his couch that he loves in there, and it's got room for everybody to do their thing, and have some privacy if they want to, and cook a meal if they want to. So that's been pretty great for us in terms of just the touring lifestyle and just making it a little less grueling.
Right, best of both worlds. Now, with you guys having the sound you do, and I've always been amazed at this because I've been a long-time listener, it's very hard to pin down your sound because it is pop, it's prog, it's jazz, it's a little bit of everything, and knowing that you put on such a good live show, I'm just thinking, like, to myself, had I not already been a fan, would I have, like, what tour would have brought me out to see you guys? Because I just can only imagine that it's maybe a little difficult to book shows that you feel like you're going to fit with everybody else. But, I've seen you guys with like the tour with Kindo where we set this whole interview up, and you guys have toured with Periphery and Haken and Protest the Hero and all these like really disparate groups. So do you ever have to overcome that challenge of like, how the hell do we pitch ourselves to get on these awesome tours?
We kind of just let the music do the talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just put our heads down,
Yeah.
work, and write. Usual rehearsal week is at least 2 days. When we were working on the new album, we were rehearsing 3 days, and I know Tom, Cody, and Joe, our drummer, they had some extra rhythm section practices. So yeah, just kind of keeping the blade as sharp as possible, and just preparing. That seems to be working so far.
Yeah, I think audiences, if you bring it live, and I think we bring it live, not to jerk us off, but I think we do a good job.
You can toot that horn. You guys bring it live.
I think regardless, even if like it's not idiomatically what the audience is accustomed to or used to, I think most of the time, even if they're weirded out for the first 2 songs, we usually win over the audiences, by midway through the set, and it's kind of funny because you can almost see it happen.
Yeah.
And because we look like a bunch of dorks going up there, and we're playing with a really heavy band, and we're walking out with sax and trumpet, and I mean Ben is probably the most metal looking one, so that he still makes the violin look menacing, but
Just having fun.
yeah, but you know what I mean. It's as long as people aren't listening with their eyes or have some kind of like false expectations, they usually walk away at least with an opinion, which is all you can ask for as a musician. You don't want indifference, you want an opinion.
Right. Well, being that you guys, your sound, not only your sound, but I guess your image or the way you sort of present everything from the designs of your album covers to maybe even the subject matter itself. I mean, it is quirky, it's weird, it's fun, it's brilliant, and I just, I feel like a lot of that goes hand in hand with the really progressive, experimental type of stuff. But what's sort of at the heart of I guess, the aesthetic of Thank You Scientist?
Poverty.
I'll take it. No, I love how weird everything is. I think it's great. And like, I just always think album to album, I did want to ask you that, is there any connection in concept from one album to the next, or is it all just sort of, you guys are just writing songs and seeing what comes out?
We always drop hints for people to find things, and we want them to find them on their own. So we will not comment.
Oh,
okay. As to allow the mystery to unfurl.
So that is a challenge, basically.
Yes.
Ooh, okay. Well, it's not like I'm not going to listen to you guys anymore after this, so I'll just have to go back and open my ears.
Yeah, I mean, when we had that Creamco hotline going on, that was, there was a lot of information hidden there, and some people ran with it. So, just keep your eyes peeled. Who knows what we'll think of next.
Okay, so that's a mysterious way to answer that question. Well, I guess back to the experimentation point. Speaking mostly to Tom, but Ben, feel free to pitch in. Tom, I know from seeing you guys live and just from listening to your stuff, you play other instruments than guitar, but in the band in general, you got theremin going on. You have that wacky little shamisen instrument and all kinds of strange stuff being thrown in. Like, how do you guys write for that sort of extra instrumentation, and does it pose any specific challenges, or is it just like any other instrument, really?
I mean, well, the shamisen, I mean, Tom's just been studying the shamisen and thought would be fun to utilize in the band in some way. I know on the Maps album, I mean, you use it at the beginning of In the Company of Worms.
Yeah, I had a smaller shamisen, which is Gyuta shamisen, which is not, I play a Suguru shamisen, which is like a full-size one nowadays. But on that album, I had like a little dinky one, and it was like, it didn't even quite sound like a shamisen, but it had some kind of vibe. So like I put together some intro for a tune on Maps in the Company of Worms with that. And then, and then we just decided, like, when I got the full-size one, and I rigged it up with a pickup and all that so we could use it live, and it was a cool thing to throw in. Anything to make the show different. And, everybody in the band plays a couple different instruments. Ben on the new record plays air hu, and he played just about every member of a string section and a bunch of other things. So, we all, that goes for just about everybody in the band plays a couple different things. So it just opens up, for possibilities.
Yeah, we're all about just expanding the color palette at our disposal. I mean, like Sam, when he joined the band, he has an iwi, the electronic wind instrument. So, like during chronology, that's features it quite a bit. So it's just, just another option we have, another type of sound to create and to mold music with.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad that it doesn't tend to alienate you guys from listeners, because I always find it fascinating that most of the people that I know that love Thank You Scientists, they're all metalheads. So many of them are metalheads, and I always think like, oh, they're metalheads, but they're listening to this wacky prog jazz stuff with, like, Tom, is it Japanese? Is it shamisen? Is that Japanese?
Yeah, that's a Japanese
instrument. Okay. Yeah, just all these like extra little things that you just wouldn't hear in that type of music, and people are so drawn to it, and I think it works so well. How do you balance all those different instruments? Like, what's a typical writing session look like when you're bringing all those different voices to the table?
Well, it all varies from song to song, but to summarize, no matter what, we are like. We work very diligently with a lot of attention to detail, and we do try to, like, even if someone brings in an idea that's more complete versus an idea that's more skeletal, like we will hash out like every kind of detail and see where it feels best going. And I think that there's really no substitute for doing that, and it would be a crime to not do that, because I'm lucky enough to be in a band with all these guys who do all this amazing shit and are coming from a completely different place from me. So yeah, it's just a matter of we get together, we put our heads together, and we're just honest about what sounds good, what sounds bad, what can we change, what could be an interesting direction for something to go that is the polar opposite of what we were thinking, and just challenging ourselves and growing. And I think that's the added bonus about being a thank you scientist for me is like it's constantly forcing me to grow as a musician, which is really great because everybody in the band like has stuff that they're so good at that it's so inspiring to be like, man, I'd love to like do A or B like Ben does, or I'd like to rip over changes like Sam does, or whatever it is, like so it's kind of like we have the fire lit under all of our collective butts, so
Yeah.
it really pushes us. It's great.
Oh yeah, I mean, just speaking from my own experience, I've definitely gotten a lot better as a player. Got a much better ear ever since I joined the band. Just being challenged, being around, really like talented and intelligent people, and also goofy people at times, because you gotta unwind and laugh. But no, I mean, I feel like my ear has gotten so much better. I'm much more versatile on my instrument than I was when I was just studying classical. So yeah, we're very fortunate to just be involved with this pool of musicians that we're in.
Right. Now, Ben, in particular, since you're the violinist, I think people have a preconceived notion of what violin players should play in, and I think you guys are a great example of what happens when you throw that stereotype or that delusion, if you will, right out the window because it works so well. But you're also in a band called Windfarer, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so you're playing violin in arguably two settings that most people don't really see violin in. What made you want to just kind of go join a jazz fusion band with a violin?
Well, I mean, violin. Well, as I said before, violin. It wasn't necessarily what I chose when I was young. My parents they said, "All right, time to learn violin." That's it. Because my grandfather, he played for his whole life, and he's in the Hartford Symphony Orchestra. So so it was in the family. But I grew up, and when I first really started to get into music, I was listening to the old Ozzy Osbourne records. I was listening to Black Sabbath, then Cannibal Corpse, Emperor. I was getting into all this metal. So I mean, if I was into that music when at the time I picked up the instrument, I probably would have picked up guitar had it been up to me. But luckily I was already skilled to an extent at violin from a young age, and then when I started to really get passionate about a specific type of music, I just tried to copy that. So yeah, I don't know. It's funny. I don't. I mean, I'm a violinist, but I don't think of myself as just a violinist. But I just, I think of myself more as a guitarist at times, because that's the type of thing that really inspired me. Riffing.
Right.
Heavy distortion. That's why I like to do that kind of thing when I solo and whatnot. But yeah, I just don't like to limit, and I think it's important to just kind of step out and try new things. Everybody thinks the violin's reserved for fiddling or just for doing classical stuff, but yeah, I think that's not true. It's not limited like that, and it can be a really nice enhancer to any part of the band. Whether it's I'm going to double or harmonize Sal, the singer, or whether I'm going to be a third horn in the horn section, or whether I'm going to be a rhythm guitar. Or if I'm going to be a solo instrument for a line. Yeah, it's
Right.
just about listening to, the context that I'm going to be playing in, and just seeing what could use a little extra spice.
Okay, extra spice. Now, speaking of Sal, I know he's not here, so you guys will have to just back him up, I guess. But I've always been curious whether or not your stuff comes does the music get written first and then Sal comes in with his ideas in mind, or is it just he's just another instrument, which really he is, but he's just another instrument where he might come in with an idea and then you guys build off of him, or vice versa? How does that typically work?
Generally, I get together with Sal and I'll come up with like a framework and we'll write vocal melodies together. So we have like a vague idea of the melodies and like the harmony, and then we just all fuck it up together, and make it unique and different, and arrange it and add stuff and take away stuff but I think what gives the pop elements to our music is that at the core we're always keeping that vocal melody in mind. And me and Sal go back and forth with tons of ideas for vocals. Like we really take a lot of time trying to, get great melodies. Like we're fans of, like, not necessarily modern pop music, but just like the Beatles, XTC, Harry Nilsson, that kind of sound, Beach Boys, whatever, that kind of pop. Like I'm fascinated by those guys. Are great melody writers, and great American songbook stuff too. Anything like that. I just love a great melody and a great harmony. So that's definitely a focus, But there are times where we write something instrumentally, and then Sal will write a part on it after that. It's like there's no real rule book for how we write per se, other than the fact that we always keep the vocals on our forefront, no matter how crazy stuff gets. And we will definitely always pull things back in favor of supporting the vocals. If at a crossroads.
Yeah, like if you had to sacrifice one thing, as long
Yeah,
as
yeah,
he still has a singable melody or something.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like if you have a band with a singer, the vocals, that's like the focal point when they're active. Unless he's just like singing some background pads or something over a part. But yeah, when he's singing lyrics, I mean, I think that's the focus right there. So yeah, just being conscious of what's going on in the song, and where the vocal line is, and just what you can do to support it.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, I that is a good point, because I was thinking about that. I have not listened to a ton of Terraformer, I will admit. I just haven't absorbed it fully yet, like the rest of your stuff, where I can like sing it start to finish. But I did notice that, I haven't really learned many of the words yet, but I always learn the lyrics better when it's something I can just remember in my head. And I was cooking dinner last night, and I think it was FXMLDR, maybe. I was like humming it. I didn't know the words, but it was like I maybe only listened to it, 10 times, and I immediately knew how it went, even if I didn't know the words. So it's definitely a standout point of your music, I think. But I really do appreciate, actually, on Terraformer, on your new album, you guys put in an absolute ton of instrumental interludes. And it was a much longer album than your previous releases, too. So did you kind of feel like there was just so much material you had and you just wanted to get it out on paper, or what was the reasoning for that?
I mean, we had a few. So I mean, we had the lineup change. It was almost 2 years ago now, I think. Where we have two new horn players and a new drummer. And at that time, we already had a few songs like done that we were playing with the old guys. But once we got the new guys in, they just were able to put a fresh spin on what we had already written, and just the fresh blood kind of helped the writing process. So, writing it was just reinvigorating, and it was fun, and we were rehearsing longer hours just out of passion, and that kind of led to just wanting to make a big bang with this new lineup, and do something a little bit more, a little bit heftier than before.
Now, I know from talking to some other people too, I wasn't really keeping up on the pre-order stuff with the new album, but maybe at some point, I don't know if it was in another interview or something, it sounds like you guys are going to try to incorporate more synths in your next work. Maybe some of the EWI, the UE, or however you say that, some of the different instrument options you use on this last album. Is that something you're heading towards?
Not like as a specific, like this is going to be our direction, but like we never want to repeat an album and do the same thing. So we always want to introduce fresh elements and can push it ahead. That whole thing about pushing ourselves and doing something different.
Okay. Somebody else had also asked too if you guys would ever consider releasing a full songbook, a score songbook of any of your stuff.
We considered it, but it would just be so huge and so costly. Like when a score to an average Thank You Scientist song, like a full score is like, we're talking like 50 to 60 pages probably.
Right.
Probably on average, like a full score, vocals, drums, and everything like that. We have the individual songbooks for like players who want to explore it. And we have just about everything scored, but it's a cost issue. It's such like, it would just be huge and wouldn't fit in anybody's bookshelf, and would be incredibly expensive to ship and incredibly expensive to make. So I mean, it would be cool. But
Yeah, maybe when we're all in our 80s or something.
yeah, exactly.
when you have some free time, when you've retired or something, but
Yeah.
Retire?
do
What's
that
that?
as yeah, play until I'm dead. So now speaking of other ways to kind of branch out and just completely flip things on its head, I super duper 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 appreciated this as a marching band kid, but you guys did a video for FXM LDR with the Bluecoats, and I was just so curious how that relationship started. And I know that back in, I think it was 2017, they did Psychopomp in one of their shows, and I'm kind of guessing that maybe they found you guys first, but I wanted to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. How did that relationship develop, and like, did you ever think that you were going to somehow do anything with a professional drum corps?
Never. That was never on my radar. I can't speak for Ben, but I didn't even really know like about the drum corps world per se.
Oh, really? Okay.
I didn't really
Yeah.
know how extensive.
It's a
and
very
crazy.
esoteric thing, and I
Yeah.
always have to explain it to people too. And I guess it's sort of like professional marching band, I guess. But go ahead.
Yeah, and they're. I mean, it's wild what these people do. I mean, if you've never seen it before, it's definitely worth checking out. It was.
Oh yeah, you'll see some videos. I mean, the coordination, just having literally 200 people on the field, all to a conductor's baton is just insane to me.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. I mean, they reached out to us because the director of the Bluecoats was a big fan of the band, and they inquired about performing some of our music, and then that led to them inviting us out to like perform kind of like a master class sort of private concert for the kids. Uh, and we went to see them do their stadium tour live. We saw them perform it. It was great, and we sort of kept in touch. And with the new album looming, I reached out to them saying like, hey, initially the idea was to try to get them on the album somehow, but then it sort of morphed into this kind of thing where we decided, we're friends with Sun Lab. They're like very close friends of ours. We gig with Kevin, the Sun Lab guy, in other iterations. Cody, our bass player, has a band with him, and he runs that whole operation. It's like a solar-powered mobile recording studio. And so, yeah, we just thought, wouldn't it be cool to, link up with the Bluecoats and do some kind of crazy video for something for our new album. So that's what we did. What you're seeing is that was probably, the videos. You're on solar power, so you don't have too much time. So we did a couple takes of the song with the group. And that was, what maybe like, hour one, hour two, whatever of us being together. That's what the video's from. So, the kids were reading the music. They had gotten it ahead of time to go over it, but, by and large, we had a little bit of rehearsal and then we just hit it. And,
Did you guys arrange that track for their brass instrumentation, or did their arrangers do it after hearing it?
Their arranger did it, and this was before we had the album recorded, so we had sent them a live recording that Ben's dad had done of the band. Ben's dad is like the archivist for Thank You Scientist.
Yeah, he's the guy in the
unofficial eighth member.
Yeah, he's the guy in the back of the venue with the sphere microphone set up.
Yeah,
and the headphones.
He's always wired up like he's doing a sting operation, but yeah. He's
pretty much any East Coast show, well, like Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania rather, and then sometimes he comes up to Canada.
Yes, yeah. So he got a pretty decent take of our first live performance of that song, which was good enough for the Bluecoats to use. We sent them the score that we had. We had scored the song, so they could hear all the detail-oriented, nitty-gritty stuff that on a just raw live recording wouldn't really come through. And Doug, with just some little suggestions from me, I had a couple calls with him. Doug Thrower, the arranger, did a really great job throwing it together and got the a nice handle on the idea of the song and ways to incorporate the Bluecoats that I think were really cool. And I'm really happy with how it came out. It was such a fun, just different thing that I never thought we would ever do, but it was a cool experience.
Yeah, I could have never seen that one coming.
That blew me away. I just couldn't believe it. Like, that's kind of the trend though in some of those drum corps where of course they have to have a themed field show for every season and stuff. And right around the time that they picked up your guys' stuff, I think the year or two prior, they had also done like Imogen Heap, who's basically my all-time favorite artist. And,
She's great. Yeah.
yeah, and just like thinking all the work that has to go into interpreting something that's in 7 or 8 different voices, trying to fit it into a brass instrumentation and drums, and then you have color guard interpreting it too, and making it just like so much more than the music is just so
Yeah,
impressive
yeah,
to me.
and they don't just play it. It's like that the amount of like contrapuntal stuff they add and like cool rhythms. Like they added a lot of really cool stuff to Psycho Pump that really spiced it up, and it was yeah, it was just cool to see what they did with it.
Right. That blew me away doing that. So you got that off your list of having a drum corps cover your stuff. If you guys could have any artist take their interpretation of your music, like whether it's an influence of yours or just an artist you like who would you want to see try to cover a Thank You Scientist song?
Cannibal Corpse.
Sure, I'll go with that.
Tom's just agreeing.
I'm not gonna come with something better than that. So
I want to make that happen. I will like crowdfund that myself. That's awesome. So speaking of other artists, I know you guys are on the Evil Inc. Records label, and that is Claudio from Coheed and Cambria's little record label. I read a little bit about how it was just kind of like a friend knowing a friend sort of thing, it sounds like, but can you tell me a little bit more about how the relationship with him came to be? And I'm assuming he's still a big fan, I'm sure.
I guess we don't really talk to him too much. He's not like super involved in the label side of things. Other than I guess curating the 2 bands that are on the label. So he's not really involved in the musical or business side of the label. But yeah, that was pretty much it. Like someone who worked for him, this guy Adrian gave a copy of Maps to him, and he ended up digging it. And before we knew it, he came to see us play in Brooklyn, and then it sort of led to this whole thing. Yeah, and so here we are now. So we signed Evil Inc. We have more Facebook likes, but we're more poor. So I'll leave it at that.
Oh, well, I remember seeing that like when I was first getting into you guys. I'm like, how the hell did Coheed and Cambria stumble across these guys? Because you don't sound anything like them. But then I looked more into the record label, and even I think it's Silver Snakes is the one other band too, and I'm like, they also don't sound anything like Thank You Scientist. So I got to give him credit for just kind of collecting bands that he thinks has a lot of talent and has something to offer the music world, even if they don't really necessarily match each other.
It's funny that you say that, because a lot of people think like, oh, these guys sound like Coheed and Cambria, and I never really saw. I mean, Sal has a high singing voice, but
that's about it.
But that's really it.
Do you guys have any particularly favorite Thank You Scientist tracks? Like any really, really personal ones?
I mean, there's ones that I have a blast playing live because they're a challenge. I mean, yeah, it's hard to be like objective about your own music.
Yeah.
Because it hits you a different way than it hits the listener, because you kind of see the nuts and bolts and you see the inner workings of it more than someone from the outside who experiences it as an experience. Yeah, but I mean, as far as like, I love playing Terraformer live. That's really fun to play live because it's such a challenge.
Son of a Serpent's one of my favorite ones. I just think the way the song came out, how it sounds, and also the way my parts came out in the end. Yeah, it's just a fun one to play. Trying to think
all new album stuff. I thought you might have like a very nostalgic answer from super duper early stuff that
I mean, for me, Blood on the Radio is always fun because that was the first song I had to learn when I was auditioning. So that one is a bit meaningful to me for that.
I love that song so much. So good choice. Now, when it comes to you guys are saying, okay, we just try to get better every album. We just try to do something a little bit different. Do you already have stuff in mind? Even though, I mean, literally your new album just came out like a month ago, barely. do you already have things in mind with the direction you're heading for new material, or are you just kind of riding out the album cycle for now? And
Yeah, we're gonna
that
just
can come
kind of
later?
get together and see what happens. See what happens naturally. We force something, it's gonna sound forced. So I'm sure it'll be very organic, and I'm sure that the direction will unveil itself naturally.
You guys are keeping me guessing. Now, Tom, when it does come to writing, stuff where you have like a fretless part or whatever, I had somebody ask me this because they wanted to know. Do you come up with that sound in your head first, and you go, hey, I know this part is going to be fretless because it gives me more control or something. Pardon me, because I'm not a guitarist, but I figure you either have a certain sound in mind, or you feel like fretless might fit that phrase better, or do you just how does that come into your head?
Well, I write specifically for the instrument because there's a lot of limitations to the instrument. As much as there's like extra freedom, there's limitations that come with it in terms of like the chord voicings that I could play like reasonably in tune. Just because Ben is the same thing on violin. There's certain things that because of like the physicality and the of your fingers, or just the way your hand is shaped, there's certain things that are possible to play in tune and certain things that are not possible to play in tune. So like I write specifically for the fretless guitar, like because I have to have like the limitations of what it can reasonably be done, on my mind. I can't like I would have to do like an amended arrangement of some other songs if I said, hey, I want to play this particular song on fretless one day, because certain chord voicings just aren't like fretless friendly, because I tend to do a lot of robust big chord voicings or closely voiced chords that are a little tricky on fretted guitar, and on fretless guitar you just like you can't bend your fingers in a way to get them in tune, no matter how hard you try. But it's not like limiting to the point where it's like a detriment to writing. You just have to write specifically for it, just if that was a long-winded answer, but if that
No, that was a great answer, because like I said, I don't play guitar, so when I watch you play that stuff, I really enjoy fretless bass and guitar, but I never really understand what's going through a composer's mind when they do that. I figured it had something to do with kind of the end sound.
Yeah, I mean, Ben is doing the same thing all the time. Ben never has frets, so
That's true.
he
flexing on everybody. I don't need frets.
Yeah, right. And he goes through the same thing. It's like, is it worth it to do this big 4-part voicing, or could I strip it down? Like, is it going to make musical sense? Is this going to be clunky? Am I going to be, like what's going to serve the music the best?
Yeah. Are you going to be able to reproduce it live accurately and not make it sound like shit?
The number one goal of every musician, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the number one goal. I think a lot of people. So. I think a lot of people. Well, a lot of bands nowadays, it's like the album is where it's like kind of changed roles. Like where it used to be like the album was the thing that allowed you to tour, and the live show was the thing. And I think in certain respects, a lot of music now, because of heavy production, heavy editing, heavy this, heavy that, it's more like the album is the thing, and the touring is secondary to the album sometimes. So but we kind of operate with an old school mentality where the live show is really our thing.
Yeah, well, I know based on your influences, Ben sent me over that little list, and you do list some older stuff on there, like Zappa, like Mahavishnu Orchestra, that type of stuff. Like, you're right, the album is kind of what people uphold now. Would you say you have a specific goal in mind when you are out at a live show? I figure it's just to put on a hell of a show, but
yeah, that's it. Just play the best I can and
sell some merch.
If I make a mistake, try to learn from it. If I improvise like a shitty solo one night, try to which happens a lot, try to figure out why it was shitty and try to troubleshoot things about my playing. I use the Thank You Scientist shows a lot to kind of like troubleshoot my own playing, my own guitar playing, or kind of like put it under the gun, like as a performer, being able to just just to really really get the stuff to come across the best I can, I guess.
Also, when you're playing the same more or less the same songs for months straight, every single day like that in a live setting, it kind of exposes what you need to work on, or what your strengths are. So as a craftsman, it's like you're every time you're out there, you're collecting data of, all right, this is good, but when I get home, I want to work on this technique or something. Um, and then but then along with that, I think part of my goal for the live show is just to make it an experience, have fun. Whether it's having like picking out a fan in the audience and making a face at them and like making some sort of connection that way, or just make something happen. Just make an
Yeah.
event, make something to remember.
Yeah.
Before I ask you another question about that, I want to say, because I'm sure he'll listen to this episode, but when I saw you guys in Pittsburgh, I think it was like last November. No, yeah, it was last November. November 2017, sorry. I don't know if you remember, but that was the show where you had a dance off, and there was a guy right up front. His name's Eric, and I think he met you guys after the show, but he was the one Sal kept calling sweaty guy, because he was like sweating through his shirt, just him, like they were just like grooving. I forget what song you guys
Yeah,
were playing.
I mean,
It
if
might
you're
have been-
if you're asking a prog band to remember a sweaty guy,
Yeah.
that's 98% of our clientele.
That's asking
more
a lot.
specific.
Yeah, that's asking a lot. But
Yeah, the sweaty guy.
not that I doubt the existence of Sweaty Eric, but if he's out there listening, what's up?
No, but I actually met him that night of the show, and I just remember thinking, like, there just aren't a lot of bands that would have a dance off like that. It really warmed my heart. But for you guys both, what really is the best part about being a musician for you?
Playing music.
That's it.
I mean, yeah, that's why we're here. I mean,
Yeah,
if-
but that's a big it. It's like we give up our lives.
It
for
is.
music, so
Yeah,
like it's
I mean, yeah, it's there's passion behind it. I mean, if the sole purpose was to do it for money, I mean, there's way better ways we could make money than do this. Way better uses of our time. Um, I feel like one thing I've told people who ask, like, would you ever recommend your career to somebody? It's like, no, I never would. Not as a career, but it's the people who, all right, maybe it's not the smartest move financially, but something in you just makes you want to go out and do it. That's not going to stop you.
yeah.
You just got to not give up.
I tell my students, like, when they ask me, like, should I go to school for music or should I try to be a professional musician? What I tell them is, like, if you can't imagine doing anything else, like, if you feel like you would be just at a loss, your life would be just, like, in ruin if you weren't playing music, like, you couldn't just imagine even functioning, then do it. But if you could for 1 second imagine yourself being comfortable, like, with a regular 9-to-5 job, then fucking do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy and it's not for everyone. But if you love it and you absolutely, it's in your wiring to do it, and I think that's with any type of artist, obviously.
And that being said, I mean, like with any decision you make in life, or like, yeah, I guess with anything, you go through periods of doubt. I have my days where I feel like I can't play for shit, or that sometimes that even I've made a mistake, like I just get stressed out. You go through phases, but you just gotta just dig deep down and just realize if that's what you want to do, just do it. Do what makes you happy.
Well, that basically predicted my next question, which was going to be, what would be your best advice for anybody who does see themselves up on stage in a crazy 7-piece jazz band? I mean, do you have any nuggets of wisdom for people who want to go do that?
Play the changes.
Advice for people who want to play music? That was the question?
Yeah, like what do you think you would? Well, you probably do tell this to your students. It's just like how do you want them to, like, what's your best advice for them breaking into the industry?
The best advice is, if you don't worry about what other people are doing and just do what naturally comes to you, what you're naturally good at, what your natural affinity is, there's 2 great things that happen. One, it's not going to sound like anybody else, because if you're just being honest and coming out, like, everybody has a different touch, everybody has a different sound, everybody has a different, a different thing about, when they approach music or playing an instrument or writing a song. So if you're writing honestly, it's not going to sound like anybody else, and thusly, you're just going to be providing something to the music listeners that they might not be able to find elsewhere. And I think that's that should be, I would imagine that's a good goal for someone to have as a musician. You want to provide something that's not there,
Right. Right.
or that they can't find, you know,
Yeah, it's like
readily otherwise.
filling that niche that nobody
Yeah,
else
yeah.
can.
So I think just by being honest, like musically honest, you kind of do that by proxy. I think like, we get into a room and write together, and it sounds like, like it sounds like the seven of us in a room.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm glad it does.
put your voice out there, and take a risk. I
Yeah.
mean, you be intelligent with that risk. By that, learn your instrument. Become proficient, and just be smart about how you present it. And also present it not only just like how the product looks, whether you're putting it digital or putting it in a physical format, but also obviously the show. Just try to look at the big picture, and just keep a goal in mind and don't give up.
All right, that's all good advice. I have one other comment before I kind of ask my signature last question. But Tom, I had made a note. I think the last time I saw you guys live, you were wearing a Shags t-shirt.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask about that because I had a feeling you were not wearing it ironically, and that you really truly have a connection with the Shags. Like they're such a point of contention. I just wanted to get your opinion on the Shags.
Yeah, I love the Shags. I mean, I just think that the reason that the Shags are so cool to me is because they have there's like an inner logic in the non-logic of their music. It's like it's so wrong yet simultaneously so right. I mean, if you listen to their music deeply, it's like it's very off kilter and strange. Yet the drummer is doing like kind of repeated motivic patterns. Like the guitar player is like playing in unison with the vocal melody, and there is like a structure there. It's not just like a free for all. So like to me, the Shags were sort of like a proto Captain Beefheart in certain respects, not intentionally. I mean, but I guess intention, doesn't really matter. I mean, I would venture to guess that the Shags failed at their intention of creating just like timeless, fun rock music for teenagers. In that respect, it was a colossal failure. But in the respect of just creating something unique and different and weird, huge success. So yeah, I mean, I am a fan of like Ben too. We're fans of movies in that regard too.
Oh, yeah.
That like don't quite fulfill the intention that they were going for, but in the process of trying to fulfill that, like it becomes a whole nother entity unto itself. And I think that is why I love the Shags, and I love a lot of music like that. And also, you go to music school, and not to say that you like, you learn a bunch of rules about music, and you listen to a lot of music that's played by great like virtuosic players. And sometimes it's great, like it's the people who don't know what they're doing that come up with very, very interesting stuff that you definitely have not heard before, for better or worse. And I think that's really cool. And that happens in other genres too, like certain metal bands and certain bands that aren't trained musicians, but I think in spite of maybe their lack of musical training, they stumble upon something that sounds right to them or sounds natural to them that's totally divergent from what someone else would do that has like a musical training, and the music is so much better for that.
Right.
Like if you went back and fixed the Shags, it would suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I used to hate them at first, and then I started to listen, and I'm like, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought. It's just so out there.
Oh yeah, it's weird. I mean, if I put it on for my girlfriend, she would, she'd probably leave the car and take an Uber somewhere. But yeah, I don't know. I like hearing things, and I know Ben is the same way from a different perspective. Loving a lot of the underground metal stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love playing in a metal band and just going to the shows. I mean, you meet so many different people, and also like a lot of these bands, they're not doing music full time. A lot of those people who play in like the underground metal scene, they have day jobs, and that's how they make their income, and this is just their outlet. This is their passion projects. And because of that, like you just see a lot of unique stuff, and you see lots of cool bands. You make friends. Yeah, everybody's there because they're just into it. You have a lot of great conversations. You learn about new bands through people. Yeah, it's like yeah, it's just like people making music because they have it in their head and they want to get it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I think music is pretty much the number one human connector, and that's why I started the show anyway, because I know everybody always has something to say about music, whether you're kind of a hardcore fan or not. Um, Tom's answer actually made me think of another question, which would be, where is the weirdest place you've ever gotten inspiration from for a song?
I mean, we wrote part of one of the songs on Stranger Heads while we were dying, so that's weird.
Oh, in the carbon monoxide leak
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, we were when we were writing Amateur Arsonist Handbook, we were unknowingly being poisoned by carbon monoxide, and were like rushed to the hospital immediately from that writing session.
Yeah, Tom, Sal, and I we were told we were 60 seconds away from death
Yeah,
because of the levels in our blood.
and our neighbors, not like we're laughing in hindsight just because how crazy it was, not because it's funny, but
Yeah.
our neighbors had passed away and they were a wall away from us, and they were dead and we had no idea.
Yeah.
And it was just so I would say that would be the craziest thing that I could think of in terms of writing. I don't know if I would call that inspiration, but I guess,
No.
I mean, we were sort of uh, unknowingly,
Altered state.
yeah,
Yeah.
unknowingly in an altered state and unknowingly inspired by looming death.
Holy crap. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it with that in mind. I had seen that in another interview that, yes, you guys had written something while that was happening. Now, I believe when I saw you guys last, isn't Everyday Ghosts, I think, the song off the new album that was partially inspired by that as well?
Everyday Ghost is more about just like dealing with industry people and the bad dealings we've had on the business side of things,
Okay.
and kind of like, you know, that coupled with self-doubt and just dealing with a lot of the negative stuff that comes with that. I think that's more where I think Sal was coming from with that tune.
Okay. Yeah, well, I gotta go back and listen to. Well, I have to go back and listen to Terraformer in general because it's really a fantastic release, and I'm glad to see you guys just every album you put out, you just keep getting stronger and stronger. I think so. Um, is there anything else kind of coming up that you'd want to mention, or just sort of leave the mystery intact?
Well, we're gonna be heading over to the UK in August, which is really cool. We're gonna be
Awesome.
headlining the Arctangent Festival. Um,
Oh, didn't
so
even know that. That's great.
yeah, a lot of great bands playing over there. We'll spend a week playing shows out there, and I guess just for those who feel like supporting us in a deeper way, buying our album helps. It was doing really well on the U.S. Billboard, and we'd like to kind of sustain the momentum. And the more different and weird music that gets attention, the more different and weird music it will be created. So I think it's one hand washes the other kind of thing. It's good for everybody.
Buy weird music, get more weird music.
That's it.
Perfect. Well, then I will leave you guys with this. My signature question at the end of my episode is always, if each of you could only listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, what would those 3 be?
Oof.
Mm, it's a tough one.
That is a really hard one. I'm thinking. Um,
I figure you both are going to have extremely eclectic answers, so
yeah,
take as
yeah.
long as you need, but
Um, that's so hard for me.
Yeah.
Um, Man, I mean, there's so many albums that I love. If I had to see, the thing is, you can ask me tomorrow and it would be totally different.
right.
Okay. So I would do Coltrane, A Love Supreme, for sure, for sure. That's one of the. I'm just kind of picking things that I can listen to and love any time of the day, and that get me super hyped. Um, Beatles, Revolver, and Megadeth, Rust in Peace. That's
Wow,
only.
not what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Um,
Ben.
that's really tough. So I'm gonna say for one, Diary of a Madman
That's a
by
good
Ozzy
yeah, that's a
Osbourne.
good one.
That the title track is probably one of my favorite songs of all time. And that album has always been very very inspirational. Um, it's tough. I'm gonna say Battle Metal by the band Teresis, this Finnish like Viking metal band, and that particular album that inspired the hell out of me when I was pretty young, like when I was about 16, 17. Um, I haven't listened to it in a while, but every time I go back and return to it, that one is just like so like dynamic. There's so much going on. It's so action packed, but it also has lots of really wonderful melodies and yeah, it's just that one to me is a treat to listen to. Um, and I'm gonna step away from a traditional album, and I've been hooked on this piece lately by Martinu. It's the Concerto for Two Orchestras, Timpani, and Piano. Um, yeah, I picked it up on vinyl. I've been a fan of Martinu's composing for a while. I started listening to his string quartets sometime last year and was getting addicted. And then when I was on tour at a record shop, I picked up this concerto for two orchestras, and I was just hanging out one night and spinning it, and I just spun it several times, and I just got hooked. So I've been kind of obsessed with that piece lately. So I think I'll be I think
You'll
it's making
you'll
it
be satisfied with that for
it's
a little bit, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely making an impact on me.
Is he a modern composer?
Yeah, he's like 20th century.
Oh, okay.
He yeah, he's a lot of his career was like the 1940s, 50s. I'm not sure exactly when he passed away. I believe it was around the 70s, but
Okay.
I was reading on the jacket of another piece he wrote. The name of the piece slips me right now, but it was talking about how him and his wife they were living in France. This was back in, I believe, 1941. So, the Nazis are invading all over Europe, and they got orders because they're both Czech natives living in France, and they got ordered by the government to go back to Czechoslovakia. Um, and they resisted. They didn't want to go back because of all the shit that was happening over there. So then, the government started to send agents after them, and in the biography, it's just talking about how he's going and he's composing while meanwhile they're on a train going to country, and he's just composing pieces, and it's just incredible because this is before any computers. This is just pen and paper. He's coming up with this like extraordinary music. Um, yeah, and eventually they made their way to the United States. But yeah, just reading that little bio about him, I just thought was just like extraordinary, just really really fascinating and admirable. Like,
That's insane.
yeah, I was just in awe reading it.
Oh wow. Well, I'm glad. I always love asking that question. One, because it's like I kind of get free music recommendations out of it if I if I don't already know those albums. But it's just fun to see what what influences people throughout their life. Like what is a lifelong love essentially. So I'm glad I got it out of you guys. So, but yeah, that's usually how I wrap up my interviews. So. Thank you guys so much for giving a little bit of your Monday to let me pick your brain, and I'm sure I will catch you guys next time you're on tour.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank
Thanks,
you again.
thank you for having us. Let
Yeah.
us know when the episode's coming out.
Thanks again, and I really appreciate the time.
Cool. Thank you.
You got
Thanks
it.
for having
All
us.
right. All right, well, thank you, everybody, and thank you for sticking with me for about a year now, as you heard me say at the beginning of this episode. I do have 2 more episodes coming up. They're already recorded. I'm just kind of being a slacker. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for always being patient. And if you have any suggestions or guests you'd like to see on Tapestry, honestly, I haven't ever really opened the table up for that, but I've been doing it for a year. I may as well. So I really appreciate listener feedback, and you guys are welcome to drop me a line at tapestrymusicpodcast@gmail.com or go over to my Facebook and Instagram page and shoot me a message. I'm more than happy to read it. So, hope you enjoyed this interview with Thank You Scientist. You can check these guys out anywhere you can find music. They are on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, the whole spiel. Plus, their website, thankyouScientist.com, always has some fun goodies and merch and things that have to do with their latest album. So they have 3 albums pre-Terraformer that are just as great. You can go check those out, and please do give them a listen and some support if you can. As always, thanks for listening.